$200 million. That's what it would cost to build Mar-a-Lago in today's money. 128 rooms, 62,500 square feet. Sitting on 17 acres of the most expensive real estate in America, between the Atlantic Ocean and Lake Worth in Palm Beach, Florida, the woman who built it wanted to give it to America. She wanted it to be the Winter White House, a place where presidents could escape Washington's cold winters and conduct diplomacy in paradise. She offered it to the government for free, completely free. A $200 million mansion, handed over as a gift to the American people. And America said no, the National Park Service said no, the State Department said no, president after president rejected it. Nobody wanted it. It sat empty for years, crumbling, infested with termites, costing a fortune to maintain. Until 1985, when a brash real estate developer from New York bought it for a fraction of its value. His name was Donald Trump, and he had plans that nobody could have predicted. This is the story of how a serial heiress built America's most extravagant mansion, how the government abandoned it, and how it became one of the most famous and controversial properties in the world. This is a story of obscene wealth, rejected gifts, and the transformation of a forgotten palace into the center of American politics. Welcome to the insane story of Mar-a-Lago. And trust me, it only gets crazier from here. Marjorie Merriweather Post didn't just inherit wealth, she inherited an empire. Born in 1,887 inches, Springfield, Illinois, Marjorie was the only child of C.W. Post, a man who would revolutionize the American breakfast table and become one of the wealthiest industrialists of his era. But C.W. Post didn't start with money. In fact, his story is one of the most remarkable rags to riches tales in American history. C.W. Post was a traveling salesman who suffered from chronic depression and debilitating anxiety. By his mid-30s, he was basically broke and broken. He checked himself into a health sanitarium in Battle Creek, Michigan, run by the famous Dr. John Harvey Kellogg. Yes, that Kellogg, the cornflakes guy. At the sanitarium, patients were fed a strict vegetarian diet that included a coffee substitute made from grains. C.W. thought the coffee substitute was terrible, but he noticed people bought it anyway because they believed it was healthier than regular coffee. That's when inspiration struck. After leaving the sanitarium, C.W. decided to make his own grain-based coffee substitute. He rented a barn, bought some equipment, and started experimenting. In 1895, he launched a product called Postum, a hot drink made from wheat bran, wheat, and molasses. C.W. was brilliant at marketing. He didn't just sell Postum as a coffee alternative, he sold it as medicine. His advertisements claimed that coffee was poison, that it caused everything from heart disease to insanity. Postum, on the other hand, would cure whatever ailed you. It was complete nonsense, of course. But it worked. Within a year, C.W. was selling $250,000 worth of Postum annually, over $8 of X million in today's money. He built a massive factory in Battle Creek and hired hundreds of workers. But C.W., he wasn't done. He started experimenting with breakfast cereals. In 1897, he launched Grape Nuts, a crunchy cereal made from wheat and barley. Despite the name, it contained neither grapes nor nuts. But C.W.'s marketing made it sound like a miracle food. He claimed it could cure appendicitis, malaria, and even loose teeth. Again, complete nonsense. Again, it worked spectacularly. Grape Nuts became one of the best-selling cereals in America. C.W. was making millions. He expanded his product line, launching Post Toasties, within other cereals. His company, Postum Cereal Company, became a household name. By 1900, C.W. Post was worth tens of millions of dollars, equivalent to billions today. He was one of the richest men in America, and he'd done it in just 5 years. But despite his success, C.W. struggled with his mental health. The depression that had plagued him for years never fully went away. He became increasingly paranoid and erratic. He believed in various pseudoscientific health treatments and spent fortunes on quack remedies. Still, he adored his daughter Marjorie. She was the light of his life, and he was determined to give her every advantage. Marjorie grew up in extraordinary luxury. She attended the finest schools. She traveled across Europe She learned multiple languages, studied music and art, and was groomed to move in the highest social circles. But C.W. also taught her about business. Unlike many wealthy men of his era who believed women couldn't handle finance, C.W. regularly discussed his business decisions with Marjorie. He brought her to the factory, showed her how products were made, explained profit margins and marketing strategies. Marjorie was fascinated. She had a natural head for business and absorbed everything her father taught her. In 1905, at age 18, Marjorie married Edward Bennett Close, a wealthy lawyer. It seemed like a good match, two prominent families joining together. They had two daughters, Adelaide and Eleanor. But the marriage was troubled from the start. Edward was controlling and traditional. He expected Marjorie to be a typical society wife, hosting parties, raising children, staying out of business matters. Marjorie tried to conform, but she was too intelligent, too ambitious, and too independent. She and Edward clashed constantly. Then, in 1914, tragedy struck. C.W. Post's mental health had deteriorated severely. Despite his wealth and success, he couldn't escape the darkness that had haunted him his entire life. On the 9th of May, 1914, C.W. Post shot himself at his winter home in Santa Barbara, California. He was 59 years old. Marjorie was devastated. She'd lost her father, her mentor, the person who believed in her capabilities when no one else did, but she also inherited everything. At age 27, Marjorie Merriweather Post became one of the wealthiest women in America, inheriting the entire Postum cereal company fortune worth roughly $250 million, equivalent to about $7 billion today. Most people expected Marjorie to simply collect dividends and live off her inheritance. After all, she was a young woman with no formal business training. Surely she'd hire men to run the company while she focused on society life. They were completely wrong. Marjorie immediately took an active role in managing the company. She attended board meetings, she reviewed financial statements, she made strategic decisions, and she proved to have her father's business instincts perhaps even sharper. But Marjorie's personal life remained complicated. Her marriage to Edward Close was falling apart. They had fundamentally different views on what her role should be. Edward wanted a traditional wife. Marjorie wanted to run a business empire. In 1919, they divorced. At the time, divorce was still scandalous, especially for someone of Marjorie's social standing. But she didn't care what society thought. She was done pretending to be something she wasn't. A few years later, in 1920, Marjorie married Edward Francis Hutton, a wealthy financier and co-founder of E.F. Hutton & Company, one of the most prestigious investment firms on Wall Street. This marriage was different. Edward Hutton respected Marjorie's business acumen. He didn't try to control her or diminish her role in managing Postum. In fact, he encouraged her ambitions. Together, they formed one of the most powerful business couples in America. And under Marjorie's leadership, Postum didn't just maintain its value, it exploded. Marjorie was a visionary. She understood that the future of the food industry wasn't just cereals, it was packaged, convenient foods that would save American housewives time. So Marjorie went on an acquisition spree. She bought the Jell-O company, she bought Maxwell House coffee, she bought Baker's chocolate, Log Cabin syrup, and Bird's Eye frozen foods. Each acquisition was strategic. Marjorie understood branding, distribution, and marketing. She knew how to make products appeal to middle-class American families. In 1929, she reorganized all these companies under a new name, General Foods Corporation. It would become one of the largest food companies in the world. By the late 1922, Marjorie was worth hundreds of millions. She was one of the richest women on the planet. She had 3 beautiful daughters, a successful marriage, and a business empire that kept growing. But Marjorie wanted more than just wealth. She wanted to create something lasting, something beautiful, something that would establish her as more than just a serial heiress. She wanted to build the most magnificent estate America had ever seen. And she knew exactly where she wanted to build it: Palm Beach, Florida. Palm Beach, in the 1922nd, was America's newest playground for the ultra-wealthy. Located on a barrier island off the coast of Florida, Palm Beach had been transformed from a sleepy beach town into an exclusive resort destination by Henry Flagler, the Standard Oil magnate, who'd built the Florida East Coast Railway and constructed grand hotels to attract the wealthy elite. By the 1,922nd, Palm Beach had become the winter retreat of choice. For America's richest families, the Vanderbilts, Astors, Whitneys, and Kennedys all had estates there. The weather was perfect, warm, and sunny when the rest of the country was buried in snow. The beaches were pristine, and most importantly, it was exclusive. Getting into Palm Beach society was nearly as difficult as breaking into New York's 400. Marjorie had visited Palm Beach several times and fallen in love with it. She loved the tropical climate, the ocean breezes, the elegant parties at the Royal Poinciana Hotel. But staying in hotels, no matter how grand, wasn't enough. Marjorie wanted her own estate. Not just a house, a palace, something that would rival the grandest estates in Newport or the Chateau of Europe. In 1924, Marjorie and her husband, Edward Hutton, started looking for property. They wanted something special: ocean access, privacy, and enough land to create a proper estate with gardens, recreational facilities, and staff quarters. They found the perfect spot, a 17-acre stretch of land between the Atlantic Ocean and Lake Worth, right in the heart of Palm Beach. It was some of the most valuable real estate in America, literally surrounded by water on 3 sides. There was just one problem. The land belonged to someone else, and they weren't interested in selling. But Marjorie didn't take no for an answer. She negotiated. She offered more money. She persisted. Eventually, she convinced the owners to sell for $1.5 million over $25 million in today's money, and that was just for the land. Now came the fun part: designing the mansion. Marjorie hired Marion Sims Wyeth, one of Palm Beach's most prominent architects, who designed estates for many of the island's wealthy residents. But Marjorie made it clear this wouldn't be just another Palm Beach mansion. This would be something unprecedented. Marjorie had traveled extensively through Europe and had fallen in love with Spanish and Mediterranean architecture, the tile work, the courtyards, the ornate details. She wanted to bring that aesthetic to America, but bigger and more elaborate than anything Europe had. She also wanted the estate to be functional as a winter retreat and entertainment venue. She envisioned hosting elaborate parties, diplomatic gatherings, and cultural events. The house needed to impress, but also be comfortable. Wyeth drew up plans for a 128-room mansion in the Spanish Moorish style. It would have Doñana-inspired towers, Venetian-style loggias, and decorative elements inspired by palaces Marjorie had visited in Seville and Granada. The main house would be 3 stories tall, with guest wings, a ballroom, a theater, multiple dining rooms, and suites for dozens of guests. The grounds would have elaborate gardens, a 9-hole golf course, tennis courts, staff quarters, and even a tunnel under the road to provide private beach access. The estimated cost? $7 million for construction, and furnishing equivalent to about $120 million today. Combined with the land purchase, the total cost would exceed $200 million in today's dollars. Edward Hutton was concerned about the cost, but Marjorie assured him they could afford it. General Foods was generating enormous profits. The stock market was booming. Money seemed limitless. Construction began in 1924, and almost immediately, Marjorie's perfectionism became apparent. She wasn't content to simply approve designs and let the builders work. She was involved in every detail. She selected each tile, eventually importing 36,000 antique Spanish tiles for the roof. She chose the Istrian stone for the exterior, imported from the same quarries that had supplied Venetian palaces. Marjorie traveled to Europe multiple times during construction, buying architectural elements from historic buildings. She purchased entire rooms from Spanish monasteries and Italian villas, had them carefully disassembled, shipped to Florida, and rebuilt inside Mar-a-Lago. She bought 16th century ceiling panels from Florence. She acquired ancient columns from Rome. She found a rare medieval fireplace in France and had it installed in one of the living rooms. The attention to detail was obsessive. Marjorie insisted that every piece of hardware, every door handle, every window latch be custom made to her specifications. She rejected materials if they weren't exactly the right shade or texture. The construction crew grew to over 300 workers laboring year-round. Expert craftsmen were brought in from Europe: Italian stonemasons, Spanish tile workers, German woodcarvers. Many of them lived on site during construction. But Marjorie's grand vision faced a major obstacle in 1926, the Great Miami Hurricane. On the 18th of September, 1926, a Category 4 hurricane slammed into South Florida. It was one of the most destructive storms in American history, killing over 370 people and causing catastrophic damage across Miami and Palm Beach. Mar-a-Lago was still under construction, but the partially built structure took a direct hit. Roofs were torn off, walls collapsed. Months of work were destroyed in a single night. Most people would have given up. The hurricane seemed like a sign that building such an elaborate estate in hurricane-prone Florida was madness. Marjorie saw it differently. She ordered the construction crews to rebuild, but this time build stronger. She had them reinforce the structure far beyond normal building codes. Mar-a-Lago would be built to withstand any storm nature could throw at it. This decision added months to the construction timeline and hundreds of thousands of dollars to the budget. But Marjorie didn't care. Mar-a-Lago would be built right, regardless of cost. As construction continued through 1927 and into 1928, the scope kept expanding. Marjorie kept having new ideas: an additional guest wing here, a larger ballroom there, an underground passage connecting different parts of the estate. The golf course was scrapped in favor of more elaborate gardens, designed by landscape architect Umberto Innocenti, who'd worked on estates throughout Italy. The gardens would feature rare tropical plants, precisely manicured hedges, and fountains imported from Italy. Inside, Marjorie wanted the latest technology, despite the historic aesthetic. Mar-a-Lago would be fully air-conditioned, nearly unheard of, in 1,920 seconds, Florida. It would have a state-of-the-art kitchen with the newest appliances, an intercom system throughout the house, and a telephone in nearly every room. The guest suites were palatial. Each had its own bathroom, a luxury at the perfect time, decorated with custom tile work and fixtures. Some suites had private balconies overlooking the ocean. The ballroom could accommodate 300 people and featured a ceiling covered in gold leaf. The dining room had a table that could seat 40 guests. The living room had a ceiling that had been imported from a 15th century Venetian palace. Marjorie also insisted on practical spaces. There was a large industrial-scale kitchen to handle dinner parties. For hundreds, extensive staff quarters, as the estate would employ over 60 full-time staff, storage rooms, wine cellars, and maintenance facilities. By 1927, the cost had already far exceeded the original $7 million estimate. But Marjorie pressed on. This was becoming her legacy project, the thing she would be remembered for long after she was gone. Finally, in December 1927, after nearly 4 years of construction, Mar-a-Lago was complete. Marjorie and Edward hosted an invitation-only preview party for Palm Beach society. Guests drove up the long, palm-lined driveway and gasped when they saw the mansion for the first time. It looked like it had been transported from Renaissance Spain. The cream-colored stone glowed in the Florida sunshine. The red tile roof seemed to go on forever. The towers and turrets gave it the appearance of a castle. Inside, guests wandered through room after room, each more spectacular than the last. The marble floors gleamed. The hand-painted ceilings depicted scenes from Spanish history. The furniture was a mix of priceless antiques and custom pieces made by the finest craftsmen. The ballroom left everyone speechless. The gold leaf ceiling caught the light from crystal chandeliers, creating a shimmering effect. French doors opened to terraces overlooking the Atlantic Ocean. Outside, the gardens were already taking shape: manicured lawns, tropical flowers, stone pathways, and fountains. The beach access was private, with a tunnel under South Ocean Boulevard, leading to a pristine stretch of sand. Palm Beach society was stunned. They'd seen grand estates before, but nothing like this. Mar-a-Lago was in a class by itself. Marjorie had achieved what she set out to do: create something that would establish her as more than just a wealthy heiress. She'd created a masterpiece, but she'd also created a problem, because maintaining Mar-a-Lago would be almost as expensive as building it. The estate required an army of staff maids, butlers, groundskeepers, chefs, mechanics, and maintenance workers. The annual operating costs would run into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And Marjorie was just getting started. Now that she had her palace, she needed to fill it with the right people: presidents, ambassadors, celebrities, and world leaders. Mar-a-Lago wasn't just going to be Marjorie's winter home. It was going to be the social and diplomatic center of American high society. The 1,930 seconds and 1,940 seconds were Mar-a-Lago's golden age. The period when Marjorie Merriweather Post transformed her mansion into something far more than a private residence. She envisioned Mar-a-Lago as America's answer to the great European palaces, a place where presidents conducted diplomacy, where ambassadors negotiated treaties, where the nation's most powerful people gathered to shape the future. And incredibly, she actually pulled it off. Marjorie's strategy was brilliant in its simplicity. She would invite everyone who mattered and show them hospitality beyond anything they'd experienced. Her first major triumph came in 1930, when she convinced President Herbert Hoover's administration to use Mar-a-Lago for informal diplomatic meetings. Hoover himself never visited, but several of his cabinet members did, and they were awestruck by the estate. Word spread through Washington that Marjorie Post's Palm Beach estate was something special, not just luxurious, but perfectly suited for discreet, high-level conversations away from the press and political pressures and the Capitol. But Marjorie's real success came during the Roosevelt administration. In the mid-1930 seconds, Marjorie married for the third time to Joseph E. Davies, a wealthy lawyer and diplomat. This marriage would be the most consequential of her life, even though it would eventually end in divorce. In 1936, President Franklin D. Roosevelt appointed Davies as the U.S. ambassador to the Soviet Union, one of the most important diplomatic posts in the world. Stalin's Soviet Union was a mystery to most Americans, and Roosevelt needed someone who could navigate the complex relationship. Davies accepted, and Marjorie went with him to Moscow. Most wealthy American women would have hated living in Stalin's Soviet Union. The harsh climate, the primitive conditions, the constant surveillance by the secret police. But Marjorie found it fascinating. She attended state dinners at the Kremlin. She met Stalin personally. She watched the show trials of Stalin's purges. And she started collecting Russian art, Fabergé eggs, imperial treasures that the Soviet government was selling off for hard currency. Marjorie spent millions acquiring pieces from the former Russian royal family and aristocracy. She bought entire rooms of furniture from palaces. She acquired jewels that had belonged to the Romanovs. She purchased icons, paintings, and decorative objects. When she and Davies returned to the United States in 1938, Marjorie brought her Russian treasures back to Mar-a-Lago. She filled entire rooms with them, creating what was essentially a private museum of imperial Russian art. This collection would later become incredibly valuable and important. Marjorie eventually donated much of it to the Hillwood Estate in Washington, D.C., where it remains one of the finest collections of Russian imperial art outside Russia. But more importantly, Marjorie's time in the Soviet Union gave her and Davies a unique perspective on international affairs. They understood the Soviet system in a way few Americans did. This made them valuable sources of insight for Roosevelt's administration. Mar-a-Lago became an informal gathering place for discussions about US-Soviet relations. Roosevelt's advisors would visit, and Marjorie and Davies would share their observations about Stalin, Soviet politics, and the looming threat of war in Europe. When World War II broke out in 1939, Mar-a-Lago took on even greater significance. Palm Beach's location made it strategically important. German U-boats were prowling the Atlantic coast, and there were genuine fears about sabotage and espionage. The Coast Guard established patrols, and security around the island was tightened. Marjorie transformed Mar-a-Lago into a center for war relief efforts. She hosted fundraisers for the Red Cross, organized donation drives, and opened parts of the estate for military use. Coast Guard officers were housed in some of the guest quarters. Mar-a-Lago's beach was patrolled for enemy submarines. But Marjorie also continued hosting parties and social events. She believed strongly that maintaining morale was important, that people needed places of beauty and joy, even during dark times. Her parties during the war years were legendary, not just for their opulence, but for who attended. Military officers, government officials, Hollywood celebrities, and foreign diplomats all mingled at Mar-a-Lago. Marjorie had a gift for bringing people together. She seated political rivals next to each other at dinner and watched them find common ground. She introduced business leaders to government officials who could help them contribute to the war effort. She created an atmosphere where important conversations happened naturally. The guest book from the 1,930 seconds and 1,940 seconds reads like a who's who of American power senators, Supreme Court justices, cabinet secretaries, military generals, Hollywood stars, industrial tycoons. Everyone wanted an invitation to Mar-a-Lago. Marjorie's entertaining style was unique. Unlike some society hostesses who were cold and formal, Marjorie was warm and genuinely interested in her guests. She remembered details about their lives, asked thoughtful questions, and made everyone feel welcome. She also understood that great parties required great food. Mar-a-Lago's kitchen was run like a French restaurant, with multiple chefs preparing elaborate multi-course meals. Marjorie would personally review the menus and often suggest changes or additions. The wine cellar was stocked with rare vintages. The table settings featured different china and silverware for each course. Some pieces dated back centuries. The flower arrangements used rare tropical blooms from the estate's gardens. But perhaps what made Mar-a-Lago most special was the setting itself. Guests could wander through rooms filled with priceless art, stroll through moonlit gardens, or walk down to the private beach and listen to the Atlantic waves. It was enchanting, intoxicating, and Marjorie made sure that the right people experienced it. By the mid-1,940 seconds, Marjorie's vision was becoming reality. Mar-a-Lago was functioning as an unofficial winter White House, a place where America's leaders could escape Washington, relax, and conduct important business in an informal setting. Presidents might not have lived there, but their most trusted advisors did visit. Decisions that shaped American policy were discussed over dinner at Mar-a-Lago. Marjorie's dream was coming true. But there was a problem she hadn't fully considered. Running Mar-a-Lago was incredibly expensive. The staff alone cost a fortune 60 full-time employees, all of whom needed salaries, housing, food, and benefits. The groundskeepers worked year-round, keeping the gardens immaculate. The maintenance crew constantly repaired and updated the aging structure. The utilities were astronomical. Air conditioning a 62,500 square foot mansion in Florida heat wasn't cheap. Neither was heating the water for the swimming pool or maintaining all the elaborate fountains. The property taxes were crushing. Palm Beach assessors valued the estate in the millions, generating annual tax bills that would be six figures in today's dollars. And then there were all the costs associated with entertaining food, wine, flowers, musicians, temporary staff for large parties. Marjorie spared no expense when hosting, which meant every major event cost tens of thousands of dollars. In the 1,930 seconds and 1,940 seconds, Marjorie could afford it. General Foods was enormously profitable. Her personal fortune kept growing. The costs of Mar-a-Lago, while substantial, were manageable. But Marjorie was getting older. She'd been born in 1887, which meant she was in her 60 seconds by the late 1,940 seconds. And she was beginning to think about what would happen to Mar-a-Lago after she died. She had 4 daughters from her various marriages, and they all had their own lives, their own homes, their own interests. None of them particularly wanted to inherit Mar-a-Lago and the massive burden of maintaining it. Marjorie understood this. She also understood that Mar-a-Lago had become more than just her home. It had become an American institution. The right thing to do, she believed, was to ensure it would continue serving the public good after her death. So Marjorie came up with an idea that seemed perfect, generous, and patriotic. She would give Mar-a-Lago to the United States government. It would become the official winter White House, a place where every president could escape Washington's cold winters, where world leaders could meet in paradise, where history would be made. Marjorie thought the government would be thrilled. She was offering them one of the most magnificent properties in America, completely free. She had no idea that her generous offer would turn into a decades-long nightmare that would nearly destroy Mar-a-Lago forever. In 1972, Marjorie Merriweather Post died at age 86. She lived an extraordinary life, building a business empire, marrying 4 times, traveling the world, and creating one of America's most magnificent estates. But her death set in motion a crisis that no one had anticipated. In her will, Marjorie bequeathed Mar-a-Lago to the United States government. She'd been planning this for years, working with lawyers to structure the donation properly. The estate, along with a maintenance endowment, would be transferred to the federal government to serve as a winter White House and retreat for visiting dignitaries. Marjorie's vision was clear. Presidents would use Mar-a-Lago the way the British royal family used Sandringham or Balmoral as an official winter residence. Foreign leaders visiting the United States could be entertained there. Important diplomatic meetings could happen in the beautiful, relaxed setting. It seemed like such a generous, patriotic gift. Marjorie was offering the government something worth tens of millions of dollars, asking nothing in return. But there was a problem. The government didn't want it. The National Park Service, which would have been responsible for managing the property, immediately expressed concerns. They sent assessors to evaluate Mar-a-Lago, and what they found was troubling. The mansion, while spectacular, was nearly 50 years old. The infrastructure needed updating. The roof needed work. Some of the plumbing and electrical systems were outdated. The air conditioning system, revolutionary in 1927, was now obsolete and inefficient. The Park Service estimated it would cost $1 million immediately just to bring the property up to modern standards, equivalent to about $7 million today. And that was just the beginning. Annual operating costs would run $1 to $2 million. The maintenance endowment Marjorie had provided, while substantial, wouldn't be nearly enough to cover these costs long term. The government would be on the hook for millions of dollars every year. There were also security concerns. Presidents in the 1,970 faced serious threats. Nixon had dealt with multiple assassination attempts, and the Secret Service was increasingly worried about protecting presidents in difficult-to-secure locations. Mar-a-Lago was a security nightmare. It was located on a public road. The beach was accessible to anyone. The property had dozens of entrances. The surrounding area was densely populated. Securing it for a presidential visit would require enormous resources. And unlike Camp David, which was on a military base and could be completely locked down, Mar-a-Lago was in the middle of a residential area. The Secret Service would have to shut down public roads, restrict beach access, and inconvenience thousands of Palm Beach residents every time a president visited. The State Department raised additional concerns. Palm Beach was too remote. If the president needed to return to Washington quickly for a crisis or emergency, it would take hours. Camp David was 60 miles from DC. Mar-a-Lago was 1,000 miles away. And honestly, the government just didn't need another presidential retreat. They already had Camp David, which was perfectly functional and well suited for its purpose. They had the presidential yacht. They had secure facilities around the country. Why take on the burden of maintaining an elaborate 1,920 mansion in Florida? But refusing such a generous donation was politically awkward. This wasn't just any property, it was Mar-a-Lago, built by one of America's great philanthropists and offered as a gift to the nation. So the government tried to be diplomatic. The Park Service thanked the Post Foundation for the generous offer and said they were evaluating how Mar-a-Lago might be used. This evaluation dragged on for years. Meanwhile, the estate sat empty, slowly deteriorating. Marjorie had left a small endowment to maintain Mar-a-Lago until the government officially accepted it. But that money was running out quickly. The property required full-time staff to keep it from falling into disrepair, gardeners to maintain the grounds, maintenance crews to fix problems, security to prevent vandalism. But with Marjorie gone and no one living there, it became increasingly difficult to justify these costs. The Post Foundation, which managed Marjorie's estate, started cutting back. Staff was reduced. Maintenance was deferred. The gardens became overgrown. In 1973, President Nixon visited Palm Beach, and there was talk about him staying at Mar-a-Lago. The Secret Service did a security assessment, and their conclusion was blunt. The property was unsuitable for presidential use. Too many security vulnerabilities. Too difficult to protect. Nixon stayed elsewhere. The same thing happened with President Ford. He visited Florida several times, but never stayed at Mar-a-Lago. The Secret Service recommendations were always the same: find somewhere else. By 1976, it was clear the government had no intention of actually using Mar-a-Lago as a winter White House. But they also hadn't officially rejected the donation. They were stuck in bureaucratic limbo, hoping the problem would somehow resolve itself. The Post Foundation was getting desperate. They were spending hundreds of thousands of dollars a year maintaining a property no one was using. The endowment was nearly depleted. Something had to change. In 1980, the foundation formally asked the government to make a decision. Either accept Mar-a-Lago officially and take responsibility for maintaining it, or reject the donation and let the foundation figure out what to do with it. The National Park Service responded with their official decision. They were declining the donation. Their reasoning was straightforward. The costs of maintaining Mar-a-Lago were too high, the security concerns were too significant, and the government simply didn't need another presidential retreat. Marjorie's dream was officially dead. The government had rejected her gift. The Post Foundation now faced a crisis. What do you do with a 128-room mansion that costs a fortune to maintain, that no one wants to live in, and that was specifically designed as a showpiece rather than a functional residence? They considered several options. Turn it into a museum. But museums require substantial endowments to operate, and the foundation didn't have enough money. Plus, Mar-a-Lago was filled with Marjorie's personal possessions, much of which had already been donated to other institutions. There wasn't enough left to make a compelling museum. Donate it to the state of Florida. The state was even less interested than the federal government. They had even less money for maintaining historic properties. Turn it into a hotel or resort. This seemed promising, but Mar-a-Lago's design made it impractical. The rooms were oddly sized for a hotel. Converting it would require massive renovations, and the neighbors would fight any commercial development, demolish it and sell the land. The 17 acres were worth millions, especially the oceanfront portions. Several developers expressed interest in buying the land, tearing down the mansion, and building luxury condos or apartments. This last option was particularly appealing from a financial perspective. The foundation could potentially sell the property for $20, 30 million money that could fund Marjorie's other charitable causes. But demolishing Mar-a-Lago seemed almost sacrilegious. This was Marjorie Merriweather Post's masterpiece, one of the greatest examples of Spanish Moorish architecture in America. It had hosted presidents, ambassadors, and world leaders. Destroying it would be a cultural tragedy. The Post Foundation was torn. They needed to do something, but every option seemed wrong. Meanwhile, the mansion continued to deteriorate. By 1981, Mar-a-Lago had been essentially abandoned for nearly a decade. The air conditioning had been shut off to save money, and the Florida heat and humidity were wreaking havoc on the interiors. The wooden paneling was warping. Mold was growing on walls. The fabric on furniture was rotting. The elaborate tile work was cracking. Parts of the roof were leaking, causing water damage to ceilings that had been hand-painted by European artisans. Worse, termites had infested the structure. South Florida termites are notoriously destructive, and with the mansion largely empty and unmaintained, they'd burrowed into walls, floors, and support beams. The damage was extensive. The gardens had become a jungle. The manicured lawns were overgrown with weeds. The hedges were wild and untrimmed. The fountains were dry and cracking. The tennis courts were covered in vegetation. The property looked haunted. This once magnificent palace now stood empty and crumbling, a ghost of its former glory. Local preservation groups in Palm Beach were alarmed. They petitioned the Post Foundation not to demolish the mansion, arguing it was an irreplaceable part of Palm Beach's architectural heritage. But the foundation countered, if preservationists cared so much, why didn't they help find a solution? The foundation couldn't afford to maintain Mar-a-Lago indefinitely just for historical sentiment. The standoff continued through 1982 and 1983. The property kept deteriorating. The foundation kept hemorrhaging money, and no viable solution emerged. Then, in late 1983, something unexpected happened. A brash real estate developer from New York came to Palm Beach, took one look at the crumbling Mar-a-Lago, and saw something no one else did. He saw opportunity. His name was Donald Trump, and he was about to make the deal of a lifetime. Donald Trump first saw Mar-a-Lago in 1982, and he immediately wanted it. At the time, Trump was 36 years old and already making a name for himself in New York real estate. He'd taken over his father's outer borough real estate business and was aggressively expanding into Manhattan, building towers and making deals that got him mentioned in the gossip columns. Trump was obsessed with status, prestige, and being taken seriously by New York's elite. He wanted to be seen as more than just Fred Trump's son. He wanted to be a major player. And part of establishing that status meant having the right properties in the right places. Trump already had Trump Tower on Fifth Avenue in Manhattan, his signature property and personal residence. But he wanted a winter estate, somewhere warm where he could escape New York winters and where other wealthy, powerful people gathered. Palm Beach was perfect. It was where the Kennedys had their compound, where the Vanderbilts and Astors had built mansions. It was exclusive, prestigious, and full of the kind of people Trump wanted to associate with. Trump had been looking at properties in Palm Beach for a while, but nothing seemed right. Most of the available estates were nice, but not spectacular. They wouldn't make a statement. They wouldn't generate headlines. Then someone told Trump about Mar-a-Lago. Trump drove by the property and was immediately captivated. Even in its deteriorated state, Mar-a-Lago was spectacular. The scale alone was incredible: 128 rooms, stretching across 17 acres between the ocean and the lake. The architecture was unique and dramatic. Trump saw the potential immediately. This wasn't just a mansion, this was a landmark. Owning Mar-a-Lago would instantly give him credibility in Palm Beach. It would be a statement that Trump had arrived. He started researching the property and learned about Marjorie Merriweather Post, about how she'd built it as an American palace, about how she'd tried to give it to the government, about how it had been rejected and was now sitting empty. Trump loved stories like this, forgotten treasures that he could swoop in and save. It fit his narrative of being a brilliant deal maker who saw value where others didn't. He contacted the Post Foundation and expressed interest in buying the property. The foundation was skeptical at first. They'd heard from various developers over the years, most of whom wanted to tear down the mansion and build condos. They assumed Trump was just another developer trying to buy cheap land. But Trump insisted he wanted to preserve the mansion, that he understood its historical significance, that he would restore it to its former glory. The foundation was intrigued but cautious. They asked Trump what he was willing to pay. Trump, always the negotiator, didn't make an immediate offer. Instead, he wanted to understand the foundation's situation. How desperate were they? What were their alternatives? What was their timeline? He learned that the foundation was spending about $400,000 a year just to maintain the property in its current deteriorated state. They'd already spent millions over the past decade with nothing to show for it. They were eager to find a solution, any solution. Trump also learned that the property was in worse shape than it appeared from the outside. The termite damage was extensive. The electrical and plumbing systems needed complete overhauls. The roof needed major repairs. Even if someone bought it, they'd need to invest millions more just to make it livable. This was exactly the kind of information Trump needed. He now understood that the foundation's negotiating position was weak. They had a property that was costing them a fortune, had no interested buyers willing to preserve it, and was deteriorating every day. Trump made his first offer, $15 million for the entire property. The foundation was insulted. The land alone was worth more than that. They'd been hoping to get at least $20 million, maybe more. They rejected Trump's offer. Trump wasn't discouraged. In fact, he'd expected the rejection. This was just the opening move in what would become an extended negotiation. Over the next several months, Trump used a strategy that he would later describe in his book, The Art of the Deal. He would apply pressure to the foundation while simultaneously making them feel like he was their only option. First, Trump started spreading word through Palm Beach that he was interested in the property. But he also let it be known that he thought the mansion was too far gone, and that he might be better off buying cheaper land elsewhere and building new ass. This created anxiety for the foundation. If Trump walked away, who else would buy Mar-a-Lago? Most other interested parties wanted to demolish it. At the same time, Trump began playing a longer game. He noticed that the oceanfront parcel directly between Mar-a-Lago's mansion and the beach was actually a separate piece of property owned by someone else. It wasn't part of the Mar-a-Lago estate. This strip of land was crucial. Without it, Mar-a-Lago's ocean-to-lake feature was somewhat diminished. The mansion technically had ocean access, but only through the tunnel under the road, and that tunnel connected to property Trump wouldn't own. Trump quietly negotiated with the owner of that beachfront parcel and bought it for $2 million. Now, Trump owned the beach property between Mar-a-Lago and the Atlantic Ocean. This was a masterstroke of negotiation. Trump went back to the Post Foundation and made a new offer, $8 million for Mar-a-Lago. The foundation was shocked. Trump's offer had gone down, not up. But Trump explained the logic. Without the beachfront parcel, Mar-a-Lago's value was significantly reduced. He now controlled beach access. If anyone else bought Mar-a-Lago, they'd have to negotiate with Trump for beach access. He had just devalued the foundation's property. It was a ruthless negotiating tactic, and it worked. The foundation realized their position had gotten worse, not better. If they rejected Trump's offer and tried to find another buyer, that buyer would face the same beach access problem. Trump had effectively cornered the market. After several more months of negotiations, Trump and the foundation reached an agreement in 1985. Trump would pay $5 million for the Mar-a-Lago mansion and land not including the beach parcel he already owned. The foundation would contribute $3 million for Marjorie's original endowment toward immediate necessary repairs. Trump would promise to preserve the mansion and maintain its historical character. In total, Trump's out-of-pocket cost was $7 million, $5 million for the main property, plus $2 million for the beach parcel. For a property that had cost over $200 million in today's dollars to build, Trump had acquired it for a fraction of its value. It was, by any measure, an incredible deal. But Trump had also acquired a massive problem. Mar-a-Lago was a wreck. The $3 million from the foundation would help, but Trump would need to spend millions more to restore the property. The question was, what exactly would he do with a 128-room mansion once it was restored? Trump had some ideas, bold ideas. Ideas that would transform Mar-a-Lago into something Marjorie Merriweather Post had never imagined. But first, he had to deal with Palm Beach society. And they were about to make things very difficult for the brash New York developer. When Donald Trump bought Mar-a-Lago in 1985, Palm Beach society was horrified. Palm Beach in the 1,980 was one of the most exclusive enclaves in America. It was old money families like the Kennedys, Phippsys, and Pulitzers, who'd been there for generations. They valued discretion, tradition, and maintaining the island's exclusive character. Trump was the opposite of everything Palm Beach represented. He was new money, loud, flashy, and obsessed with publicity. He put his name in giant letters on his buildings. He courted tabloid attention. He was everything old Palm Beach found vulgar. The fact that Trump now owned Mar-a-Lago, Marjorie Post's beloved estate, the crown jewel of Palm Beach architecture, felt like a betrayal to many longtime residents. They'd hoped Mar-a-Lago would become a museum or cultural center. Instead, it was now owned by a developer from Queens who'd made his fortune building casinos. Trump, for his part, was well aware he wasn't welcome, but he'd faced similar resistance in Manhattan and had won them over. He was confident he could do the same in Palm Beach. He started by making an effort to fit in. He joined Mar-a-Lago to the National Register of Historic Places, demonstrating his commitment to preservation. He hired respected local architects and craftsmen to oversee the restoration. He met with historical societies to discuss his plans. But Trump also made it clear he wasn't going to be constrained by Palm Beach's stuffy traditions. His vision for Mar-a-Lago was audacious. He wanted to turn it into the most exclusive private club in America. Trump's logic was sound from a business perspective. He'd bought Mar-a-Lago for $7 million, but restoration would cost at least another $10 million, probably more. And even after restoration, the annual operating costs would be enormous staff, maintenance, taxes, utilities. If Mar-a-Lago was just his private residence, it would be a massive money pit. But if he converted it to a club, the membership fees and dues could cover the operating costs and even generate profit. The club model also solved another problem. Trump couldn't use all 128 rooms himself. Much of the mansion would sit empty most of the time. As a club, the entire property would be utilized, with members hosting events, dining in the ballrooms, and using the recreational facilities. Trump announced his plans in 1986. Mar-a-Lago would become an ultra-exclusive private club. Membership would be limited. Initiation fees would be $100,000 or more. Only the wealthy elite would be accepted. Palm Beach was outraged. Converting Mar-a-Lago into a club would mean commercial activity events, parties, increased traffic. It would disrupt the quiet residential character of the neighborhood. Property values could be affected. Neighbors also worried about who Trump would let into the club. Would it maintain the standards that Palm Beach's existing clubs had? Or would Trump let in anyone willing to pay? The town of Palm Beach required Trump to get approval from the town council to convert the property to club use. This began a years-long battle that would test Trump's negotiating skills and willingness to fight. The town council held hearings. Neighbors testified against the club, citing concerns about noise, traffic, and changing the neighborhood's character. Historical preservationists worried that club use would damage the historic property. Trump fought back aggressively. He hired lawyers, lobbyists, and public relations experts. He argued that without club revenue, he couldn't afford to properly maintain Mar-a-Lago, and the mansion would fall into disrepair again. He also made a brilliant strategic move. He claimed that preventing him from opening a club was discriminatory and violated his property rights. But Trump's most effective tactic was much more personal and pointed. Trump noticed that Palm Beach's existing private clubs, the Bath and Tennis Club, the Everglades Club, had restrictive membership policies. They didn't explicitly exclude people, but everyone knew that Jews and African Americans were effectively barred from membership. This was common at elite clubs across America in the 1,982nd, though it was becoming increasingly controversial and legally questionable. Trump, in a move that was part genuine principle and part strategic brilliance, announced that his club would have no such restrictions. Mar-a-Lago would accept members regardless of religion or race. Anyone who could afford the membership fees and met reasonable standards would be welcome. This put the town council in a difficult position. How could they reject Trump's club application when Palm Beach's existing clubs were discriminatory? If they denied Trump's permit, he could sue, claiming discrimination and potentially force the town to address the membership practices of all clubs. The threat was real, and it worked. In 1993, after years of negotiation and legal wrangling, the town of Palm Beach approved Trump's application to convert Mar-a-Lago into a private club, though with significant restrictions on the number of events, parking, and operating hours. Trump had won, but the victory came with conditions that would limit how commercially successful the club could be. Still, Trump moved forward. He completed the restoration of Mar-a-Lago, spending far more than he'd initially budgeted. The termite damage was worse than expected. The mechanical systems needed complete replacement. The decorative elements required painstaking restoration by specialist craftsmen. By the time the club opened in 1995, Trump had invested approximately $25 million, total $7 million, for the purchase, and roughly $18 million for restoration and conversion. The Mar-a-Lago Club officially opened with an initiation fee of $100,000 plus annual dues of $5,000. Trump positioned it as the most exclusive club in Palm Beach, which, given the property and amenities, wasn't an exaggeration. The club offered privileges no other Palm Beach club could match. Access to a 128-room mansion filled with priceless antiques, a private beach, ocean to lake property, elaborate gardens, multiple dining rooms, a grand ballroom, and unparalleled luxury. But would people actually join? Trump had a significant advantage. Unlike Palm Beach's old guard clubs with their restrictive policies, Mar-a-Lago welcomed anyone wealthy enough to afford the fees. This opened membership to Jewish families, successful minorities, and new money entrepreneurs who'd been excluded from other clubs. The strategy worked. Within a few years, Mar-a-Lago had attracted several hundred members, new wealth, from New York, successful business people, celebrities, and even some old Palm Beach families who appreciated Mar-a-Lago's grandeur, despite their initial skepticism of Trump. The club became known for lavish parties and events. Trump personally attended many functions, working the room, making connections, and ensuring members felt they were getting their money's worth. Mar-a-Lago also became a venue for charity galas and fundraisers. Trump would rent out spaces for significant events, generating additional revenue beyond membership dues. By the late 1992, the Mar-a-Lago Club was financially successful. The membership fees and dues were covering operating costs and generating profit. Trump's gamble had paid off. But Trump's relationship with Palm Beach remained complicated. Many old guard families still viewed him as a crass outsider. They attended Mar-a-Lago events because the venue was spectacular, but they didn't fully accept Trump into their social circles. Trump, ever sensitive to slights and obsessed with status, resented this. He'd saved Mar-a-Lago from demolition, he'd restored it beautifully. He'd opened doors to people previously excluded. Yet Palm Beach society still treated him like an interloper. This resentment would simmer for years, and it would factor into decisions Trump made decades later. But in the late 1992s and early 2000s, Trump was too busy expanding his empire to dwell on Palm Beach social politics. He had casinos to run, buildings to develop, and a reality TV career to launch. Mar-a-Lago became his winter retreat, a place he'd spend weekends and holidays away from New York's intensity. He loved showing off the property to visitors, giving personal tours, and pointing out architectural details and historical artifacts. For about 15 years, from 1995 to 2010, Mar-a-Lago existed in a relatively stable state. It was a successful private club, a beautiful historic property, and Trump's personal winter residence. Then, Trump decided to run for president, and everything about Mar-a-Lago was about to change in ways no one, including Trump himself, could have predicted. When Donald Trump announced his candidacy for president in June 2015, most people, including many political analysts, thought it was a publicity stunt. Trump had flirted with presidential runs before, but never seriously pursued them. This time was different. Trump's campaign was unconventional from the start. Instead of traditional campaign headquarters in Iowa and New Hampshire, Trump ran much of his operation from Trump Tower in New York and Mar-a-Lago in Florida. During the campaign, Mar-a-Lago became an unofficial campaign hub. Trump held meetings with potential donors and advisors there. He conducted strategy sessions by the pool. He made phone calls from his private quarters. The club's members got an insider's view of a presidential campaign. Trump would wander through the dining room, stopping at tables to chat, asking opinions, testing messages. Members felt like they were part of something historic. When Trump shocked the world by winning the 2016 election, the first question on many people's minds was, what would happen to Mar-a-Lago? Trump would be president, but he'd also still own the club. How would that work? Would he sell it? Put it in a blind trust? Stop visiting? Trump's answer was simple. He'd keep it, and he'd keep visiting. Within weeks of his inauguration, Trump made his first presidential visit to Mar-a-Lago in February 2017. The visit immediately sparked controversy and set the tone for years of debate about the property. Security was the first issue. The Secret Service had to completely lock down the property and surrounding area. Roads were closed, the beach was restricted, Coast Guard boats patrolled the waters, snipers were positioned on roofs. This caused massive disruption for Palm Beach residents. Every time Trump visited, which would be frequently, the island essentially shut down. Neighbors complained about the noise from helicopters, the traffic from presidential motorcades, and the security checkpoints. Some filed lawsuits trying to limit Trump's visits, but Trump loved Mar-a-Lago and had no intention of staying away. He began spending nearly every weekend there during the winter months. The frequency of visits earned Mar-a-Lago a new nickname in the press, the Winter White House, or the Southern White House. Ironically, Marjorie Merriweather Post's dream had finally come true. Mar-a-Lago was functioning as a presidential retreat, just not in the way she'd imagined. Trump conducted official business from Mar-a-Lago. He held meetings with cabinet members, foreign leaders, and members of Congress. He made phone calls on secure lines installed in a makeshift situation room. Most controversially, Trump continued to mix official business with his private club. He'd have dinner in the public dining room where club members could watch him conduct affairs of state. Foreign leaders visiting for meetings would tour the property and interact with club members. This created unprecedented situations. club members found themselves dining at the next table while Trump and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe dealt with the North Korean missile crisis. They watched as Trump reviewed classified documents in public spaces. Critics argued this was a massive security breach and conflict of interest. Club members shouldn't have access to presidential meetings. The club was not a secure location for discussing sensitive matters. Ethics experts pointed out that Trump was profiting from his presidency. The value of Mar-a-Lago memberships skyrocketed after he became president. The initiation fee, which had been $100,000, doubled to $200,000 shortly after the election. People were paying for access to the president. Mar-a-Lago memberships became the ultimate status symbol and networking opportunity. Trump defended the arrangement, saying he was conducting business efficiently and that presidents needed downtime. He compared it to previous presidents using Camp David or their private homes. But the comparison wasn't quite accurate. Camp David is a secure government facility. Mar-a-Lago is a commercial club with hundreds of members and guests, where anyone willing to pay can potentially gain proximity to the president. The media was fascinated. Reporters staked out Mar-a-Lago, trying to see who was meeting with Trump. Club members posted selfies with the president on social media. Every visit generated headlines. Trump seemed to enjoy the attention. He'd work the room at Mar-a-Lago like he always had, but now he was president. He'd stop at members' tables, take photos, listen to their suggestions on policy. Some members later claimed they'd influenced presidential decisions during casual conversations at Mar-a-Lago. Whether true or not, the perception that Mar-a-Lago membership bought influence was damaging. The visits also became expensive for taxpayers. Each trip to Mar-a-Lago cost millions in security, transportation, and personnel. Over 4 years, Trump's Mar-a-Lago visits cost taxpayers an estimated $100 plus million. Critics argued this was wasteful, especially since Trump had criticized Obama for taking vacations and golfing. Trump countered that he was working during Mar-a-Lago visits, not vacationing. The property itself became a target. In 2019, a Chinese woman carrying malware-loaded devices was arrested after gaining access to Mar-a-Lago. Security experts warned that the club was vulnerable to espionage. There were also bizarre incidents. In 2018, during a North Korea crisis, Trump and Abe were photographed reviewing classified documents in the Mar-a-Lago dining room using cell phone flashlights because the lighting was poor. Club members took photos of the scene and posted them on social media before being asked to delete them. These incidents raised serious questions about whether Mar-a-Lago was appropriate for conducting presidential business, but Trump continued using it heavily. Over his 4-year presidency, he visited Mar-a-Lago more than 130 times, spending approximately 280 days there. The club itself thrived during this period. Membership was in high demand. Events were booked solid. Mar-a-Lago was internationally famous, no longer just a Palm Beach club, but a household name worldwide. However, this attention came with downsides. Protesters regularly gathered outside the property during Trump's visits. The town of Palm Beach was increasingly frustrated with the disruption, and the controversy hurt some of Mar-a-Lago's business. Several charities moved their annual galas elsewhere to avoid political association. When Trump lost the 2020 election, another question emerged. What would happen to Mar-a-Lago after his presidency? The answer shocked many people and potentially violated the agreement Trump had made with the town of Palm Beach decades earlier. Trump announced he was changing his official residence from New York to Florida, and not just to Florida, specifically to Mar-a-Lago. He was going to live there permanently. This created an immediate legal problem. When Trump had negotiated permission to convert Mar-a-Lago into a club in the 1,990 seconds, he'd agreed with the town that the property would be used only as a club, not as a private residence. The agreement explicitly stated that no one, including Trump, could live there more than 21 days per year. Trump had signed this agreement. It was part of the deal that allowed the club to operate. But now, Trump was claiming Mar-a-Lago as his primary residence, clearly violating the 1,993 agreement. Neighbors and the town of Palm Beach demanded enforcement. They argued Trump needed to either comply with the agreement or move somewhere else. Trump's lawyers argued the agreement was ambiguous, and that as the property owner, Trump had the right to live there. They also suggested that, as a former president, Trump deserved special consideration. The dispute went back and forth throughout 2021 and into 2022. The town was reluctant to aggressively enforce the agreement against a former president, but neighbors were increasingly angry. Trump largely ignored the controversy and continued living at Mar-a-Lago full-time. Then, in August 2022, Mar-a-Lago made headlines for a completely different reason, one that would thrust the property into the center of a historic federal investigation. The 8th of August 2022 started like any other summer day at Mar-a-Lago. The club was largely empty, most members were elsewhere during Florida's hot, humid summer months. Trump himself was at his golf club in Bedminster, New Jersey. Then, early in the morning, FBI agents arrived at Mar-a-Lago with a search warrant. Over 30 agents swept through the property, searching Trump's private residence within the club. They were looking for classified documents that Trump had allegedly taken from the White House when he left office in January 2021. The search lasted approximately 9 hours. Agents went through Trump's office, bedroom, and storage areas. They removed boxes of documents, including materials marked as classified, some at the highest levels of government secrecy. When news of the search broke, it dominated headlines worldwide. The FBI had just searched a former president's home. This was unprecedented in American history. Trump, watching the news from New Jersey, was furious. He immediately released a statement calling the search an unwarranted raid and comparing it to persecution by an authoritarian regime. His supporters were outraged. Many saw it as political targeting by the Biden administration. Protests erupted outside Mar-a-Lago, with Trump supporters gathering to show solidarity. Trump's critics argued the search showed he'd broken the law by taking classified materials, potentially endangering national security. But how had it come to this? Why was the FBI searching Mar-a-Lago? The story actually began months earlier, in January 2022, when the National Archives, the government agency responsible for preserving presidential records, realized that many documents from Trump's presidency were missing. Federal law requires presidents to turn over all official documents and records to the National Archives when they leave office. These records belong to the American people, not the president personally. The archives contacted Trump's team and asked for the missing documents. After negotiations, Trump returned 15 boxes of materials in January 2022. But when archivists reviewed the boxes, they were shocked to discover they contained classified documents, over 100 documents marked as classified, including some at the highest classification levels. This was a serious problem. Classified documents are supposed to be stored in secure government facilities with specific safeguards. Keeping them in a private club that hosted events and had hundreds of members was a potential national security breach. The archives referred the matter to the Department of Justice. The DOJ began investigating whether Trump had violated laws regarding the handling of classified information in presidential records. The DOJ issued a subpoena demanding Trump return any remaining classified materials. Trump's lawyers certified that they'd conducted a thorough search and returned everything. But the DOJ had evidence suggesting more classified documents remained at Mar-a-Lago. They believed Trump's team had not been fully truthful about what was still there. This led to the decision to execute a search warrant, an extraordinary step, but one the DOJ felt was necessary, given the sensitivity of the materials and concerns that Trump wouldn't voluntarily return everything. The August 2022 search recovered more than 100 additional classified documents that Trump had not returned, including materials marked top secret, and even some related to nuclear weapons programs, among the most sensitive secrets the US government possesses. The search also revealed how these documents had been stored, in boxes, in a storage room, in Trump's office, and reportedly even in his personal residence areas. Security was minimal. Club members and guests potentially had access to areas where classified materials were kept. The Department of Justice began a criminal investigation. Did Trump knowingly retain classified materials he wasn't supposed to have? Did he obstruct justice by not complying with a subpoena? Was national security compromised? Trump maintained that he'd done nothing wrong. He claimed he had the authority to declassify any documents he wanted while president, and that therefore the materials weren't actually classified. He also suggested the documents were planted by the FBI, an allegation without evidence. Legal experts debated Trump's claims. While presidents do have broad declassification authority, there are specific procedures that must be followed. Simply taking documents and claiming they're declassified doesn't make it so. More importantly, even if the documents were declassified, they were still presidential records that belonged to the archives, not Trump personally. The investigation continued through 2022 and into 2023. A grand jury was convened. Witnesses testified. Trump's lawyers negotiated with prosecutors. Mar-a-Lago itself became part of the investigation. How secure was the facility? Who had access? Were there security camera recordings showing who handled the documents? The club's surveillance system became crucial evidence. The DOJ obtained footage showing boxes of documents being moved around Mar-a-Lago, including, allegedly, after the subpoena had been issued, potential evidence of obstruction. In June 2023, Trump was indicted on 37 federal charges related to his handling of classified documents, including willful retention of national defense information, conspiracy to obstruct justice, and making false statements. It was the first federal indictment of a former US president. Trump pleaded not guilty and continued insisting he'd done nothing wrong. He claimed the prosecution was politically motivated, an attempt to damage his 2024 presidential campaign. The case is ongoing, as of this writing, with a trial scheduled. But regardless of the legal outcome, the classified documents investigation transformed Mar-a-Lago's public image once again. It was no longer just the Winter White House or an exclusive private club. It was now the site of a federal investigation, a place where classified secrets had been allegedly mishandled, potentially compromising national security. For the residents of Palm Beach, it was yet another controversy surrounding the property they'd once hoped would remain a quiet historic estate. But Mar-a-Lago's story wasn't finished. Because even amid all this legal drama, Trump was planning something else, something that would bring Mar-a-Lago back to the center of American political life. He was running for president again, and if he won, Mar-a-Lago would once again become the Winter White House. Mar-a-Lago's story spans nearly 100 years from Marjorie Post's golden age of the 1,920 seconds and 30 seconds, through decades of abandonment to Trump's ownership and transformation of the property into a center of American political controversy. But what does this story really tell us? What can we learn from the strange journey of this one extraordinary property? First, Mar-a-Lago's story is fundamentally about the gap between vision and reality. Marjorie Post built Mar-a-Lago with a specific purpose: to be a grand estate where presidents and diplomats could gather, where important decisions would be made in beautiful surroundings, where American power would be displayed through architecture and hospitality. Her vision did come true, just not in the way she imagined. Mar-a-Lago did become a Winter White House, but only after being rejected by the government, abandoned for years, bought by a real estate developer, converted to a club, and then occupied by a president who owned it personally. The path from vision to reality was nothing like what Marjorie had planned. And yet, in a strange way, her dream was realized. This speaks to a larger truth. Grand visions rarely unfold as intended. The future has a way of taking unexpected turns. What seems impossible can happen. What seems certain can fall apart. Second, Mar-a-Lago's story illustrates the changing nature of American wealth and power. Marjorie Post represented old-style American capitalism: inherit a fortune, grow it through business, use it to build something permanent, and give back through philanthropy. Her wealth came from feeding America breakfast. Her legacy was supposed to be giving her estate to the nation. Trump represents a different model: new money, self-promotion, branding, and using controversy to build name recognition. His wealth came from real estate and entertainment. His legacy is inseparable from his personality and political career. The fact that Mar-a-Lago passed from one to the other, from the serial heiress to the reality TV star, says something about how America has changed over the past century. We've moved from an era where wealth was supposed to be somewhat discreet, where philanthropy was expected, where the wealthy saw themselves as stewards with obligations to society, to an era where wealth is openly flaunted, where self-promotion is a virtue, where the wealthy see themselves as winners who earned everything and owe nothing. This shift isn't unique to Mar-a-Lago, but the property's story makes it visible in a particularly clear way. Third, Mar-a-Lago reveals the complex relationship between public and private in American life. Should a former president live in a commercial club? Should government business be conducted in a place where anyone who can afford membership can watch? Should taxpayers fund security for a property that generates private profit for the president? These questions don't have easy answers. They reveal tensions in American democracy that we haven't fully resolved. On one hand, there's a long tradition of presidents using private properties. Jefferson had Monticello, FDR had Hyde Park, Kennedy had the family compound in Hyannisport. We accept that presidents are also private citizens with personal lives. On the other hand, there's something different about a president using a commercial property he owns and profits from. The conflicts of interest are obvious. The security concerns are real. The optics are problematic. Mar-a-Lago forces us to confront these contradictions, and different people reach very different conclusions depending on their politics and values. Fourth, Mar-a-Lago's story shows how historic preservation is complicated and often messy. Preservationists wanted Mar-a-Lago saved because it's architecturally significant, but preservation requires money, enormous amounts of money. Who should pay for that? The government said no. Preservation groups couldn't afford it. The Post Foundation couldn't sustain it indefinitely. Trump saved Mar-a-Lago from demolition, but he did so by converting it to a commercial club, changing its fundamental character. Is that preservation, or is it transformation? There's no clear answer. Mar-a-Lago still exists as a building, still showcases its historic architecture and design, but it's no longer what Marjorie Post created. It's something new. This tension exists with many historic properties. Pure preservation is often financially impossible. Adaptive reuse is more practical, but changes the property. Demolition is sometimes the only economically viable option. Mar-a-Lago was lucky it was spectacular enough and valuable enough that someone found a way to make it economically sustainable. Most historic properties aren't so fortunate. Fifth, Mar-a-Lago's story is about the relationship between wealth and access in America. From the beginning, Mar-a-Lago was about who got in and who didn't. Marjorie Post's guest lists were exclusive. Only the most important, influential, well-connected people received invitations. Palm Beach's other clubs were exclusive in a different way, excluding people based on religion and race, not just wealth and status. Trump's Mar-a-Lago challenged this model. He accepted members regardless of religion or race, but he still maintained exclusivity through price. $200,000 initiation fees ensure that only the wealthy can join. This raises questions about different types of exclusivity. Is economic exclusivity more acceptable than racial or religious exclusivity? Is a club that's open to anyone who can afford it more democratic than one with other restrictions? Again, there are no easy answers. Trump's challenge to Palm Beach's old discriminatory clubs was genuinely progressive in some ways, but replacing religious discrimination with economic barriers isn't exactly egalitarian. Mar-a-Lago remains exclusive just based on different criteria than before. Sixth, the property's story illustrates how much context matters in valuation. Mar-a-Lago cost over $200 million in today's dollars to build. The Post Foundation hoped to sell it for $20, 30 million in the early 1,980 seconds. Trump bought it for $7 million total in 1985. After Trump's presidency, the property was valued at over $160 million for tax purposes, though Trump's critics argued it was worth far more, possibly $300 plus million, given the publicity and prestige. These wild valuation swings weren't primarily about the physical property, the mansion, land, and amenities. They were about context. Who owned it? What it was used for? How famous it was? And whether people wanted to be associated with it. When it was abandoned and deteriorating, it was worth very little, despite being architecturally magnificent. When it became the Winter White House, its value skyrocketed, despite being essentially the same building. This is a broader lesson about value. Things are worth what people will pay, and that depends heavily on circumstances, timing, and perception, not just inherent qualities. Seventh, Mar-a-Lago's story reveals how Trump's deal-making shaped his political rise. Trump's acquisition and transformation of Mar-a-Lago demonstrated skills he'd later use in politics: patience and persistence. He negotiated for years to get the property at his price. Understanding leverage, he bought the beach parcel to devalue the main property, challenging established power. He fought Palm Beach society and won. Using controversy strategically, he weaponized the discrimination issue against existing clubs, branding and publicity. He made Mar-a-Lago internationally famous. These same tactics appeared in his political campaigns. Trump understood how to identify weaknesses, apply pressure, challenge established systems, and use media attention to his advantage. Mar-a-Lago was his training ground. The skills he developed fighting Palm Beach's town council and old money establishment prepared him for political warfare. Whether you admire or despise Trump, the Mar-a-Lago deal showed genuine business acumen. He identified an undervalued asset, figured out how to overcome obstacles, created a viable business model, and built something valuable. His political critics often dismissed Trump as simply a trust fund kid who inherited wealth. But Mar-a-Lago tells a more complex story, showing real negotiating skill, strategic thinking, and execution ability. Eighth, the property's history reflects America's complicated relationship with wealth and class. We're a country founded on rejecting aristocracy and European class systems. We don't have titles or hereditary positions. We pride ourselves on being a meritocracy where anyone can succeed. And yet, we create our own aristocracies. We build exclusive enclaves like Palm Beach. We create clubs with restrictive memberships. We use wealth to buy access and influence. Mar-a-Lago embodies this contradiction. It's an American palace built to rival European estates, simultaneously rejecting and imitating European aristocratic traditions. Marjorie Post wanted to create American aristocracy through culture and architecture rather than titles. Trump wanted to crash that aristocracy and rebuild it with himself at the center. Both visions are very American, the self-made, or in Marjorie's case, inherited. Wealthy trying to create lasting legacies and establish their place in history. The fact that their visions were so different, Marjorie's genteel philanthropy versus Trump's brash commercialism, shows how much American culture has changed over the past century. Ninth, Mar-a-Lago demonstrates how properties can become symbols that transcend their physical reality. Mar-a-Lago is just a building, impressive certainly, but ultimately just a mansion on a piece of land in Florida. But it's become something much larger in American consciousness. It's a symbol of different things to different people. To Trump supporters, American success, beautiful architecture, presidential dignity. To Trump critics, corruption, conflicts of interest, mishandled secrets, excess. To preservationists, architectural heritage saved from demolition. To Palm Beach residents, an ongoing disruption and controversy. To historians, a unique piece of Gilded Age style architecture. To the media, an endless source of stories and intrigue. The physical property hasn't changed much since the 1,920 seconds. But its meaning has transformed dramatically depending on who owns it, who uses it, and what happens there. This is true of many significant properties: the White House, Graceland, the Dakota Building, where John Lennon was killed. They accumulate meanings and associations that dwarf their physical reality. Mar-a-Lago has become one of these symbol properties, a place where the building itself almost doesn't matter anymore compared to what it represents. Finally, Mar-a-Lago's story is fundamentally American in its ambition, contradictions, and ongoing evolution. Only in America could a woman build a 128-room palace to rival European estates while claiming to represent American values. Only in America could that property be rejected by the government and sit abandoned for years. Only in America could a brash developer turn it into a commercial club while fighting discrimination battles. Only in America could it become a winter White House, owned by the president himself. The whole bizarre journey from Marjorie's grand vision to government rejection to Trump's transformation to political controversy could only happen in America. It's a story about dreams, money, power, persistence, controversy, and how nothing ever works out quite the way anyone plans. And the story isn't over. Mar-a-Lago's next chapter is still being written. Behind all the controversy and headlines, Mar-a-Lago is still fundamentally a business. And understanding the business model reveals a lot about how the property functions and why it matters. Let's break down the economics of Mar-a-Lago and detail how it makes money, what it costs to operate, and why it's been such a valuable asset for Trump. Mar-a-Lago generates income from several sources. Initiation fees. When Trump first opened the club in 1995, the initiation fee was $100,000. After he became president, it doubled to $200,000. With an estimated 500 members, that's potentially $100 a million in initiation fees collected over the years, though many early members paid less and some may have received discounts. The initiation fee is a one-time payment, but it's substantial revenue whenever new members join. Trump likely collected $20.30 million in additional initiation fees during and after his presidency as membership became more desirable. Annual dues. Members pay approximately $14,000, $20,000 per year in dues. The exact amount varies by membership tier and is not publicly disclosed. With 500 members, that's roughly $7.10 million per year in recurring revenue. This is the financial backbone of Mar-a-Lago predictable annual income that covers baseline operating costs. Event rentals. Mar-a-Lago rents out its ballrooms and facilities for private events, weddings, charity galas, corporate functions. These events can cost $100,000 or more depending on guest count and services. The property hosts dozens of such events annually, potentially generating several million dollars in additional revenue. Guest fees. Members can bring guests, but there are charges for guest meals, golf, spa services, and other amenities. This generates additional revenue on top of membership dues. Accommodation fees. While Mar-a-Lago isn't technically a hotel, it does have guest suites that members and their guests can rent. The rates for these rooms are substantial, likely generating hundreds of thousands in annual revenue. In total, Mar-a-Lago likely generates somewhere between $20.30 million in annual revenue from all sources. This is a rough estimate based on available information. The club is private and doesn't disclose detailed financials. Running Mar-a-Lago is extraordinarily expensive. Staff. The property employs over 150 people, year-round chefs, servers, maintenance workers, groundskeepers, housekeeping, security, management. With wages, benefits, and payroll taxes, staff costs easily exceed $10 million annually. Maintenance. A nearly 100-year-old mansion requires constant upkeep. The roof needs periodic repairs. The elaborate tile work needs maintenance. The mechanical systems need servicing. The salt air corrodes metal and degrades materials. Annual maintenance likely costs several million dollars. Utilities. Air conditioning 62,500 square feet in Florida heat is expensive. So is heating the pool, running the fountains, and keeping lights on throughout the property. Utility bills probably run $500,000 plus annually. Property taxes. This is a big one. Palm Beach County assesses Mar-a-Lago's value at approximately $27 million for tax purposes, though many believe the actual market value is much higher. Property taxes in Palm Beach are roughly 2% of assessed value, so Trump likely pays around $500,000, $600,000 annually in property taxes. Insurance. Insuring a historic mansion on a barrier island in hurricane-prone Florida costs a fortune. Especially after several hurricanes have hit Florida in recent years, insurance premiums have skyrocketed. Mar-a-Lago's insurance likely costs several $100,000 annually. Food and beverage. The club offers fine dining, which means fresh ingredients, premium wines, and high-quality preparation. Food and beverage costs for a club serving thousands of meals monthly add up to millions annually. Even before Trump became president, Mar-a-Lago needed substantial security given its high-profile membership and valuable contents. Security costs before Secret Service involvement probably ran several $100,000 annually. Grounds and landscaping. The 17 acres of elaborate gardens require constant attention. Landscaping crews work daily, trimming hedges, maintaining lawns, caring for tropical plants, and ensuring everything looks immaculate. This likely costs $1 plus million annually. Professional services, legal fees, accounting, consulting, marketing, insurance adjusters, all the professional services needed to run a complex operation. These costs add up to hundreds of thousands annually. Total operating costs probably run $18 to $5 million annually. This means Mar-a-Lago likely generates a modest profit of a few $1,000,000 per year under normal circumstances. However, these numbers changed dramatically during Trump's presidency. When Trump became president, Mar-a-Lago's value, both financial and symbolic, skyrocketed. Membership became more valuable. Access to the president, even casual social access, is incredibly valuable. Business people, lobbyists, foreign nationals, and anyone seeking to network with Trump's circle had strong incentives to join. The doubling of initiation fees to $200,000 reflected this increased demand. And reportedly, there was a waiting list for membership. Events became more prestigious. Hosting an event at the Winter White House carried cachet that translated to higher prices. Charities could attract bigger donors by holding galas at Mar-a-Lago. Corporations could impress clients. The Trump Association made the venue more valuable. International attention. Mar-a-Lago became world famous. Foreign business people and dignitaries wanted to visit. This expanded the potential membership pool beyond Palm Beach to include international members. Some estimates suggest Mar-a-Lago's annual revenue may have increased by $5 million during Trump's presidency, simply due to increased demand and higher prices. However, Trump's presidency also created costs and complications. Security disruption. Secret Service requirements during presidential visits were extensive. The club had to coordinate with federal agents, restrict certain areas, implement additional security protocols, and deal with the disruption this caused to normal operations. While the government paid for Secret Service costs, the operational disruption to the club's business was real. Lost business. Some members resigned over political disagreements with Trump. Some charities moved their annual galas elsewhere to avoid political controversy. Some potential members avoided Mar-a-Lago specifically because of the Trump Association. This somewhat offset the gains from increased demand. Legal costs. The various investigations, lawsuits, and controversies surrounding Mar-a-Lago generated significant legal bills. Trump's legal team had to respond to subpoenas, document requests, and litigation related to the property. Political scrutiny. Being at the center of political controversy brought unwanted attention. Every business practice was examined. Critics filed ethics complaints. Journalists investigated every aspect of the club's operations. This didn't directly cost money, but created headaches and potentially exposed vulnerabilities. How much is Mar-a-Lago actually worth? This is a complicated question that's been hotly debated. Trump's financial disclosures have valued Mar-a-Lago at over $160 million. Some real estate experts estimate it could be worth $300 million or more, given its size, location, history, and fame. However, Palm Beach County assesses it at just $27 million for tax purposes. This massive discrepancy has led to accusations that Trump either inflates the value when seeking loans, using the higher figure, or deflates it to reduce taxes using the lower figure. The truth is that valuing unique properties like Mar-a-Lago is inherently subjective. As a private club, its value is based on cash flow. If it generates $5 million annually in profit, a typical valuation might be 10-15x earnings, suggesting $50.75 million. As real estate, the 17 acres of oceanfront Palm Beach property are incredibly valuable. The land alone could be worth $100 plus million if developed for luxury condos or estates. As a historic property with Trump Association, it has intangible value that's hard to quantify. The brand value, the history, the fame, these add value, but how much? As a going concern with an established membership, it's worth whatever someone would pay to acquire the business, property, and all its associated value. Different valuation methods produce wildly different numbers. This ambiguity has been used by both Trump and his critics to support their arguments. One reason Mar-a-Lago's valuation matters is taxes. If it's worth $300 million, Trump should be paying far more in property taxes. If it's really only worth $27 million, as assessed, he's paying appropriately. Trump has fought to keep Palm Beach's assessment low, arguing that the property has limited development potential due to historic preservation restrictions, that it's expensive to maintain, and that comparable sales support the lower valuation. Critics argue he's deliberately undervaluing the property to avoid taxes, while simultaneously claiming it's worth much more when that serves his interests. the tax strategy extends beyond property taxes. Mar-a-Lago generates various tax deductions. Business expenses related to operating the club, depreciation on the buildings, and improvements interest on any debt secured by the property. Losses in years when expenses exceed revenue. These deductions reduce Trump's overall tax burden. And because Mar-a-Lago is structured as a business, the club, rather than purely a personal residence, more expenses become deductible. This is legal tax planning, but it illustrates how the wealthy use business structures to minimize tax obligations. Perhaps Mar-a-Lago's most valuable and controversial aspect isn't the real estate or club revenue, it's the access and influence the property provides. During Trump's presidency, Mar-a-Lago membership became a gateway to the president. Members could potentially interact with Trump casually during dinners and events, meet cabinet members, foreign leaders, and other officials visiting Trump Network, with other influential members gain insight into Trump's thinking and priorities, potentially influence decisions through informal conversations. This access is extremely valuable, but impossible to quantify financially. How much is it worth to have regular, casual access to the president? To be able to introduce yourself, your ideas, or your business? For a lobbyist, business person, or foreign national, this access could be worth millions. A single contract, policy change, or introduction could generate value far exceeding the $200,000 membership cost. This is why ethics experts were so concerned. Trump was essentially monetizing access to the presidency, not directly or explicitly, but through club membership that provided proximity and opportunities for informal influence. Trump defenders argued this was no different from political fundraisers where donors get time with candidates, or from any other networking opportunity where access has value. Critics argued it was fundamentally different because Trump personally profited, because access was ongoing rather than limited to a single event, and because it wasn't transparent, we don't know who members are or what conversations happened. Now that Trump is no longer president, Mar-a-Lago's business model faces questions. Will membership remain as valuable without presidential access? Will the initiation fees need to decrease? Will event bookings decline? Or will Trump's continued prominence in politics and his potential return to the presidency maintain Mar-a-Lago's elevated status? Early indications suggest the club remains popular. Membership is still in demand, events are still booked, and the property continues to generate substantial revenue. Part of this is because Mar-a-Lago has become a political pilgrimage site for Trump supporters. It's where Trump lives and works. It's the headquarters of his post-presidential political operation. It's where he hosts events and meets supporters. As long as Trump remains a major political figure, Mar-a-Lago will maintain special status and value. But there's also underlying value in the property itself. It's a spectacular estate in an exclusive location with first-class amenities. Even without the Trump political connection, it would be a highly desirable club. The question is, how much of Mar-a-Lago's current value is the Trump premium, and how much is fundamental property value? Time will tell. For all the controversy and headlines, most Americans have never seen inside Mar-a-Lago. The property is private, access is restricted to members and their guests, and Trump has carefully controlled what images are released publicly. But over the years, enough information has emerged from former employees, guests, members, and investigative journalists to piece together what life inside Mar-a-Lago is actually like. Let's take a detailed tour through the mansion and grounds, exploring the spaces that have hosted presidents, celebrities, and thousands of club members over the decades. Approaching Mar-a-Lago, visitors drive through ornate gates and up a palm-lined driveway. The mansion reveals itself gradually, first the towers and turrets appearing above the trees, then the full facade coming into view. The effect is deliberate. Marjorie Post wanted visitors to feel like they were entering something special, removed from ordinary life. The long approach builds anticipation. The exterior is cream-colored Doñana stone from Spain, which has weathered beautifully over nearly a century. The red tile roof, composed of 36,000 antique Spanish tiles, gleams in the Florida sun. The Moorish-style towers and Venetian-inspired details create an eclectic but harmonious architectural statement. Upon entering, guests find themselves in a grand hallway with marble floors imported from Italy. The ceilings are hand-painted with elaborate designs. The scale is immediately impressive. This is clearly not just a house, but a palace. Staff dressed in formal uniforms greet arrivals. The atmosphere is one of refined luxury, quietly elegant rather than flashy, at least in the public spaces Marjorie designed. The main living room is one of Mar-a-Lago's most spectacular spaces. The ceiling was imported from a 15th century Venetian palazzo, literally disassembled in Italy, shipped to Florida, and reconstructed. It features elaborate gilded moldings and hand-painted panels depicting scenes from Italian history. The fireplace is medieval, sourced from a French chateau. The furniture is a mix of priceless antiques and custom pieces, made specifically for the room. When Marjorie Post owned Mar-a-Lago, this room was filled with her collection of European decorative arts, French china, Russian Fabergé eggs, Italian paintings. Much of that collection has since been donated to museums, but Trump has filled the space with his own artwork and decorative objects. The living room opens onto terraces overlooking the Atlantic Ocean. In good weather, the French doors are thrown open, allowing sea breezes to flow through the space. This room has hosted countless important conversations over the decades. Presidents, ambassadors, and business leaders have gathered here for informal discussions. It's where deals are made, alliances are formed, and decisions that affect millions of people are quietly negotiated. The Mar-a-Lago ballroom is legendary. It can accommodate 300 people and features a ceiling covered in gold leaf that catches light from crystal chandeliers, creating a shimmering effect. The room is used for gala dinners, charity fundraisers, weddings, and other major events. When Trump became president, it also hosted state dinners and diplomatic receptions. The ballroom's design is intentionally grand, meant to impress guests and create a sense of occasion. Marjorie Post studied ballrooms in European palaces and wanted Mar-a-Lago's to rival anything abroad. The acoustics are excellent, allowing for live music without sound amplification. Over the years, the ballroom has featured performances by famous musicians, orchestras, and entertainers. The space can be configured differently depending on the event: round tables for dining, rows of chairs for performances, or open for dancing. Staff can transform it remarkably quickly. For many members, events in the ballroom are the highlight of Mar-a-Lago membership, getting dressed up, socializing with other members, and experiencing true luxury. Mar-a-Lago's main dining room seats approximately 40 at a single long table. Though it can be configured with multiple smaller tables for larger gatherings, the room features elaborate wood paneling, ornate chandeliers, and artwork depicting classical scenes. The table settings use formal china and silverware, different patterns for different courses, following European dining traditions. During Trump's presidency, this dining room became controversial because it was semi-public. Club members dining at their own tables could watch as Trump conducted official business at his table. Foreign leaders, cabinet members, and military officials would gather with Trump for working dinners, while club members and their guests dined nearby. It created unprecedented situations where unofficial observers could witness sensitive conversations. Security officials were alarmed by this arrangement, but Trump seemed to enjoy it. He'd often leave his table to walk around the dining room, greeting members, chatting, taking photos. For members, dining near the president was thrilling a brush with power and history they'd paid dearly to experience. The food at Mar-a-Lago is generally excellent, though Trump himself is famously not a foodie. He prefers well-done steaks, fast food, and simple preparations. The club's menu accommodates both Trump's tastes and members who want more sophisticated cuisine. Within Mar-a-Lago, Trump has a private residence that's separate from the club areas. This is where he actually lives, and access is extremely restricted. The residence occupies part of the original mansion and features Trump's personal decorating aesthetic, which is quite different from Marjorie Post's original design. Trump favors gold, lots of gold, gold-plated fixtures, gold furniture accents, gold-framed mirrors. His aesthetic is often described as Louis XIV meets Atlantic City, opulent, flashy, and unapologetically ostentatious. His bedroom reportedly features a large bed with a gilded headboard and silk bedding. The walls are adorned with framed magazine covers featuring Trump and photos from his career. Trump's office within the residence is where he conducts business. It's filled with memorabilia photos with world leaders, championship belts from wrestling events he hosted, framed letters from famous people, awards, and honors. This is Trump's command center. From this office, he ran his real estate empire, produced The Apprentice, managed his presidential campaign, and later his post-presidency political operation. The residence also includes the storage room that became famous during the classified documents investigation, a windowless space where boxes of materials were kept, raising questions about how secure these sensitive documents actually were. Mar-a-Lago has multiple guest suites used by overnight visitors. The suites vary in size and luxury, but all are well appointed with private bathrooms, sitting areas, and high-end furnishings. The best suites have ocean views and private terraces. They're decorated in varying styles, some maintaining Marjorie Post's original aesthetic, others updated to more contemporary luxury standards. During Trump's presidency, these suites hosted visiting dignitaries, family members, and close associates. The Japanese Prime Minister stayed here, as did various cabinet members and advisors. For regular club members, the suites can be rented for special occasions, or when they want to stay overnight after events. Through the tunnel under South Ocean Boulevard, members access Mar-a-Lago's private beach club. The beach itself is pristine, white sand, clear water, and private access that ensures it never feels crowded. Members can reserve cabanas, order food and drinks from the beach club restaurant, and enjoy water sports. The beach club building features changing rooms, showers, a casual dining area, and a pool. It's less formal than the main mansion, more relaxed, where members wear resort attire rather than jackets and ties. Trump is often seen at the beach club on weekends, though he's not known for swimming or water sports. He prefers to sit and talk with members, conduct informal meetings, and sometimes just watch the ocean. The beach has also been controversial during Trump's presidency due to security concerns. Beachgoers outside the Mar-a-Lago property line could potentially see or photograph activities on the club's beach, creating security vulnerabilities. Wait, didn't we say Marjorie Post scrapped the golf course? She did. But Trump, being Trump, wanted golf. So he created a shuttle service to Trump International Golf Club, located about 15 minutes away. Mar-a-Lago members get access to this separate Trump golf course as part of their membership. The golf course is world-class, designed by Jim Fazio and featuring views of the Intracoastal Waterway. It's where Trump spends many mornings when he's in Palm Beach. He's obsessive about golf playing frequently, hosting tournaments, and using the course as an informal office for conducting business. Many political and business discussions have happened on Trump's golf course. Critics have pointed out Trump's hypocrisy in this regard. He constantly criticized Obama for golfing, then golfed far more frequently as president himself. But for Trump, golf isn't purely recreation. It's networking, relationship building, and informal deal-making. Some of his most important conversations happen on the golf course. Mar-a-Lago's 17 acres include elaborate gardens that remain spectacular nearly a century after their creation. There are manicured lawns, tropical plantings, stone pathways, and multiple fountains. The landscaping team works constantly to maintain everything in perfect condition. The gardens feature rare tropical plants that Marjorie Post collected from around the world. Some of the original plantings still survive, now mature specimens that would be impossible to replace. The grounds also include tennis courts, walking paths, and various outdoor entertaining spaces. During Trump's presidency, parts of the grounds were used for additional security infrastructure guard posts, camera systems, and temporary facilities for Secret Service agents. Despite the security presence, the gardens remain beautiful. They're used for outdoor weddings, garden parties, and simply as beautiful spaces for members to stroll and enjoy. Behind the glamorous public spaces, Mar-a-Lago has extensive back-of-house areas that members never encounter. Industrial kitchens where dozens of staff prepare meals for hundreds of people. Staff quarters and break rooms. Many employees work long shifts and need places to rest. Maintenance workshops where skilled craftsmen repair the presses. Constant wear and tear on a century-old building. Storage areas filled with furniture, china, linens, and equipment for different types of events, security offices and monitoring stations, both club security and, during Trump's visits, Secret Service command centers, loading docks and service entrances, where deliveries arrive out of members' sight, Running Mar-a-Lago requires an army of workers who remain largely invisible to members. The seamless luxury experience depends on hundreds of people doing unglamorous work behind the scenes. Many of these employees are immigrants from Latin America, the Caribbean, Eastern Europe. They work hard for relatively modest wages to maintain the lifestyle of some of America's wealthiest people. This economic reality exists beneath Mar-a-Lago's gilded surface, another American contradiction, where immigrant labor sustains the lifestyle of a president who campaigned on restricting immigration. What's it actually like to spend time at Mar-a-Lago as a member? By most accounts, it's genuinely impressive. The property is beautiful, the service is excellent, and there's a real sense of being somewhere special. Members describe a clubby atmosphere, seeing familiar faces, chatting with friends, enjoying the amenities. There's a social scene, with regular events, themed dinners, and holiday celebrations. The food is good, the wine selection is extensive, and the setting is spectacular. Having dinner on the terrace as the sun sets over the Atlantic is legitimately magical. For members who don't care about politics, Mar-a-Lago is simply a wonderful club in a perfect location. For those drawn to politics and power, it's intoxicating. Being in proximity to a former president and possible future president, seeing important people come and go, feeling like you're part of something significant, that's a powerful draw. But the experience has also become more complicated and politicized. Being a Mar-a-Lago member now makes a statement. You're signaling Trump support, or at least acceptance. You're okay with the controversies. You want to be part of Trump's world. For some members, this is exactly what they want. For others who joined before Trump's political career, it's become uncomfortable. The property itself hasn't changed much, but its meaning has transformed completely. And that transformation isn't finished. Mar-a-Lago's story continues to evolve, shaped by Trump's political future and America's ongoing debates about wealth, power, and access. As we near the end of this story, one thing is clear. Mar-a-Lago's journey is far from over. Nearly 100 years after Marjorie Merriweather Post broke ground on her dream estate, the property continues to surprise, provoke controversy, and evolve in ways no one could have predicted. Let's look at where things stand today and consider what the future might hold for America's most famous mansion. As of 2024, Mar-a-Lago exists in a unique state. It's Donald Trump's primary residence, though the legal status of that arrangement remains contested with the town of Palm Beach. It's a functioning private club with several hundred members paying $200,000 to join plus annual dues. It's the headquarters of Trump's post-presidential political operation, where he conducts meetings, hosts fundraisers, and plans his political future. It's a secure site, monitored by Secret Service. As a former president, Trump receives lifetime protection, and his residence must be secured accordingly. It's the subject of ongoing federal investigation related to classified documents. It's a national historic landmark, protected by preservation laws. It's one of the most photographed and discussed properties in America, instantly recognizable to hundreds of millions of people. Trying to define what Mar-a-Lago actually is has become nearly impossible. It's simultaneously a home, a business, a political headquarters, a crime scene according to federal investigators, a historic landmark, and a symbol of American power and controversy. This multiplicity of identities is itself remarkable. Most properties have a clear purpose. Mar-a-Lago defies categorization. Several ongoing legal issues will shape Mar-a-Lago's near-term future. The classified documents case. As of this writing, Trump faces federal charges related to his handling of classified materials at Mar-a-Lago. The case involves serious allegations, willful retention of national defense information, obstruction of justice, false statements to investigators. If Trump is convicted, it could result in prison time. Even if he's acquitted or charges are dropped, the case has already affected Mar-a-Lago's reputation and raised questions about security at the property. The case also revealed details about how Mar-a-Lago operates, that many found troubling classified documents stored in a bathroom, boxes moved around the property, security footage showing staff handling sensitive materials. These revelations have damaged the property's image as a secure, well-managed facility. The residence dispute. The town of Palm Beach still hasn't definitively resolved whether Trump can legally live at Mar-a-Lago full-time, given the 1993 agreement limiting residential use. Trump has largely ignored this issue, betting that the town won't aggressively enforce rules against a former president. So far, he's been right. The town has taken no meaningful enforcement action. But the underlying legal question remains unresolved. If Trump weren't former president, would the town allow this arrangement? The answer is almost certainly no. This creates awkward precedent and raises questions about equal application of law. Valuation disputes. New York's Attorney General has filed civil fraud charges against Trump related to allegedly inflating asset values, including Mar-a-Lago. The case claims Trump valued the property at $739 million for financial statements shown to lenders, while the tax assessment is only $27 million. Trump argues these are simply different valuation methods for different purposes, and that all valuations are subjective. Critics argue this shows a pattern of fraud inflating values to get better loan terms than deflating them to reduce taxes. This case could result in significant financial penalties and could affect Trump's ability to do business in New York. Ongoing investigations. Various federal and state investigations continue examining different aspects of Trump's business dealings, and Mar-a-Lago features in several of them. These legal issues create uncertainty about the property's future. They also generate enormous legal bills that must be paid from somewhere, potentially affecting Mar-a-Lago's finances. From a pure business perspective, how is Mar-a-Lago doing? The evidence suggests it's actually thriving financially, despite, or perhaps because of, all the controversy. Membership remains in high demand among Trump supporters and those wanting access to his circle. The club reportedly has a waiting list, and some members have sold their memberships to others for significant profits. Event bookings remain strong, particularly for Republican political fundraisers, conservative organization galas, and weddings for families in Trump's orbit. The Trump brand, while toxic to roughly half of Americans, remains powerful and valuable to the other half. For Trump supporters, Mar-a-Lago membership is a badge of loyalty and a way to support their political champion. The property has also become a must-visit destination for Republican politicians seeking Trump's endorsement or support. Presidential candidates, senators, congresspeople, and state-level politicians all make pilgrimages to Mar-a-Lago to meet with Trump. This gives the property continued political significance regardless of whether Trump holds office. From Trump's perspective, Mar-a-Lago has been one of his most successful investments. He bought it for $7 million, and it's now worth somewhere between $160 million, conservative estimate, and $300 plus million, optimistic estimate. Even accounting for the money he's invested in renovations and improvements over nearly 40 years, the return on investment has been spectacular. More importantly, Mar-a-Lago has given Trump something money can't buy: prestige, legitimacy, and a power base. It's been instrumental in his transformation from real estate developer to political figure. If Trump wins another presidential election, Mar-a-Lago would once again become the winter White House, but with even more complications than the first time. The security concerns would be amplified given the previous classified documents issues. The Secret Service would need to implement much stricter protocols. Parts of the club might need to be permanently closed to members during presidential visits. The ethics questions would be even more pointed. Trump would have learned from the first term that he can use Mar-a-Lago as an official presidential venue without facing serious legal consequences. Would he push even further? The business would likely boom even more. Membership would become even more valuable and exclusive. Initiation fees might rise to $500,000 or more, but the property would also face even more intense scrutiny. Every conversation, every meeting, every guest would be analyzed. The pressure on the club's operations would be immense. It's also possible that a second Trump presidency would finally force clearer rules about presidential use of personally owned commercial properties. Congress might pass legislation specifically addressing the conflicts of interest that Mar-a-Lago represents. If Trump's political career ends, whether through electoral defeat, legal consequences, or simply aging out of politics, what happens to Mar-a-Lago? The property would lose some of its political cachet, but it would remain a valuable Palm Beach club with exceptional amenities. Membership would probably decline somewhat as the Trump political connection fades. Initiation fees might drop back toward $100,000. Some members who joined primarily for political access might resign. But Mar-a-Lago has underlying value beyond Trump's political status. The property itself is spectacular. The location is unbeatable. And decades of operation have created an established club with loyal members. It would survive and likely remain profitable, just less extraordinary than during Trump's political peak. Eventually, Trump will pass away. He's in his late 72nd as of this writing. His will almost certainly leave Mar-a-Lago to his children, likely with provisions for how it should be managed. Would the Trump children keep operating it as a club? Would they sell it? Would they convert it to something else? The property's historic landmark status limits what can be done with it. It can't be demolished or drastically altered. But within those constraints, future owners would have options. Mar-a-Lago is now approaching 100 years old. The building needs constant maintenance to prevent deterioration. Historic preservation is expensive and complicated. Original materials need to be carefully restored using traditional techniques. Modern building codes must be satisfied without destroying historic features. Climate control must protect fragile elements while keeping guests comfortable. Trump has invested significantly in maintenance over his 40 years of ownership. But he's also made changes that purists would question, adding his own aesthetic touches, modernizing some systems in ways that altered original designs. When Trump eventually passes ownership to the next generation, will they have the same commitment to preservation, or will financial pressures lead to compromises? The property's National Historic Landmark status provides some protection, but it's not absolute. Owners can still make changes, especially if they argue those changes are necessary for the building's survival or economic viability. There's a real risk that over time, Mar-a-Lago could lose some of its historic integrity through gradual alterations and updates. Each change might seem minor, but cumulatively, they could transform the property into something very different from what Marjorie Post created. Historic preservationists worry about this, but they also acknowledge that without the club revenue Trump generates, Mar-a-Lago might not survive at all. It's another uncomfortable compromise, accepting some changes to ensure the property's economic sustainability and basic preservation. For Palm Beach residents, Mar-a-Lago has been a mixed blessing. The property is undeniably beautiful and adds to the island's prestige. Many residents are proud to have such a historic landmark in their community. But the disruptions have been significant, especially during Trump's presidency. Road closures, security checkpoints, helicopter noise, increased traffic, media presence all have impacted quality of life for nearby residents. Some neighbors have seen their property values increase due to proximity to such a famous location. Others have seen values decrease due to the disruptions and controversies. The town of Palm Beach has struggled to balance competing interests, supporting a major property owner and employer while protecting residents' quality of life. This tension will continue as long as Mar-a-Lago remains politically significant. Mar-a-Lago has become a media obsession. News organizations station reporters in Palm Beach to cover Trump's activities at the property. Every visitor is noted and analyzed. Photos of the property appear constantly in news coverage. This media attention is unprecedented for a private club. Most exclusive clubs value discretion and privacy. Mar-a-Lago has become the opposite, constantly in the spotlight, with every detail scrutinized. For some members, this attention is unwelcome. They'd prefer to enjoy the club without cameras and reporters documenting who's coming and going. For others, particularly those in Trump's political orbit, the attention is desirable. Being photographed at Mar-a-Lago signals status and connection to power. Trump himself clearly enjoys the media attention. He's spent his entire career courting publicity, and Mar-a-Lago gives him a perpetual stage. But this constant media presence also creates security concerns and operational challenges. The club has had to increase security, implement stricter entry protocols, and deal with paparazzi trying to photograph events. Perhaps most significantly, Mar-a-Lago has become a cultural symbol representing different things to different Americans. To Trump supporters, Mar-a-Lago represents success and achievement proof that hard work and deal-making can build something magnificent American grandeur, rivaling European palaces while remaining distinctly American political resistance, a headquarters for fighting back against liberal elites, and mainstream media. Aspirational luxury, the lifestyle they'd choose if they had unlimited wealth. To Trump critics, Mar-a-Lago represents corruption and conflicts of interest, a president profiting from his office, excess and poor taste, gaudy decoration and wasteful spending, security vulnerabilities, an insecure facility where secrets were mishandled, inequality, extreme wealth, while many Americans struggle. To historic preservationists, Mar-a-Lago represents architectural heritage worth protecting, the challenges of preserving private properties, the compromises necessary to keep historic buildings economically viable, a success story, a building that could have been demolished but was saved. To Palm Beach, Mar-a-Lago represents the island's grand past, a connection to the golden age of 1,920 seconds, a state building, ongoing controversy, a property that's brought both prestige and problems, economic impact, a major employer and attraction, the challenge of balancing history, business, and residential character. These different perspectives explain why Mar-a-Lago generates such passionate reactions. It's not just a building, it's a symbol onto which people project their broader feelings about wealth, power, politics, and America itself. Mar-a-Lago's story offers lessons relevant beyond one property. Historic preservation requires sustainable economics. Beautiful buildings need viable business models or wealthy, committed owners. Good intentions alone aren't enough. Private-public boundaries are complicated. Should presidents use personal properties for official business? How do we balance their privacy with security and ethics concerns? Symbols matter as much as reality. Mar-a-Lago's cultural significance often overshadows its physical reality. Managing perception is as important as managing the actual property. Flexibility enables survival. Mar-a-Lago has survived by adapting from private estate to rejected gift to club to winter White House. Rigid preservation would have likely meant demolition. Controversy can create value. The negative publicity surrounding Mar-a-Lago hasn't destroyed it in some ways. It's enhanced the property's fame and mystique. Elite spaces remain powerful, despite American egalitarian ideals. Exclusive clubs like Mar-a-Lago continue to matter. Access and proximity to power remain valuable. Nothing is permanent. Mar-a-Lago has been completely reimagined multiple times in its history. It will undoubtedly change again. So, looking back over nearly 100 years of history, what's the verdict on Mar-a-Lago? Was Marjorie Merriweather Post's dream realized or betrayed? Did Trump save the property or exploit it? Has Mar-a-Lago been good for America or problematic? The honest answer is all of the above. Mar-a-Lago is simultaneously a preservation success story and a cautionary tale, a testament to American achievement and excess, a beautiful historic property and a controversial political symbol, a thriving business and an ethics nightmare, a realization of Marjorie's dreams, and a complete transformation of them. The property defies simple judgments because it's genuinely complex, containing real beauty and real problems, legitimate historic value, and troubling conflicts of interest, successful adaptation, and questionable changes. Perhaps that complexity is itself the most American thing about Mar-a-Lago. America has always contained contradictions, idealism and pragmatism, democracy and inequality, preservation and progress, principle and compromise. Mar-a-Lago embodies all of these tensions in one spectacular, controversial, impossible to ignore property. What happens next with Mar-a-Lago? That depends on Trump's political future, his legal challenges, his business decisions, and eventually his succession planning. But whatever happens, Mar-a-Lago will endure. The property has survived nearly 100 years through hurricanes, depressions, wars, abandonments, and controversies. It's proven remarkably resilient. Future generations will visit Mar-a-Lago, whether as a club, museum, hotel, or something not yet imagined, and marvel at its architecture, learn about its history, and debate its meaning. They'll hear about Marjorie Merriweather Post's grand vision, about America's rejection of her gift, about Trump's controversial ownership, about the classified documents stored in a bathroom, about presidents dining in public, about all the bizarre twists in this improbable story. And they'll wonder, as we do now, how did a serial heiress's rejected gift become the center of American political controversy? The answer, as we've seen, is long, complicated, and quintessentially American. It's a story about dreams and disappointments, about vision and reality never quite matching, about how nothing ever works out the way anyone plans. It's a story about wealth and how we celebrate it, resent it, aspire to it, and struggle with it. It's a story about power, how it's gained, how it's displayed, how it's transferred, and how it corrupts. It's a story about America itself, ambitious, contradictory, excessive, innovative, troubled, and endlessly fascinating. Mar-a-Lago isn't just a mansion. It's a mirror reflecting America back at itself, showing both our greatness and our flaws, our achievements and our failures, our beauty and our ugliness. And that's why, nearly 100 years after Marjorie Merriweather Post broke ground, we're still talking about it. $200, $1 million. That's what it cost to build Mar-a-Lago in today's money. Marjorie Merriweather Post wanted to give it to America as a gift. America said no. The mansion sat empty, crumbling, forgotten. Then, a real estate developer from Queens bought it for pennies on the dollar and transformed it into a private club. Then that real estate developer became president and turned the club into the Winter White House. Then classified secrets were allegedly stored in a bathroom and the FBI raided the property. It's been almost 100 years and Mar-a-Lago's story just keeps getting stranger. But here's what's remarkable. Despite everything, the rejection, the abandonment, the controversies, the legal battles, Mar-a-Lago endures. The mansion Marjorie built is still standing, still beautiful, still hosting parties and events, still at the center of American life, even if not in the way she imagined. She wanted it to be the Winter White House. And in the strangest way possible, it became exactly that. Her dream came true, just 50 years late, in a completely unexpected way, with an owner she never could have imagined. That's the story of Mar-a-Lago. A story about dreams deferred, second chances, American reinvention, and how nothing, not buildings, not fortunes, not legacies, ever turns out quite the way we plan. Marjorie Merriweather Post built Mar-a-Lago to last for centuries, to be a permanent monument to American achievement. She succeeded. Mar-a-Lago will be here long after all of us are gone. But it won't be the quiet museum piece she envisioned. It'll be loud, controversial, impossible to ignore, just like the country she wanted to serve. And somehow, that seems perfect. Now, if you've made it to this point, I just want to say thank you. This has been one of the most fascinating stories I've ever researched. The fact that a property could have such a wild journey from Gilded Age excess to government rejection to Trump's Winter White House is almost too crazy to believe. But it's all true. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Mar-a-Lago's history, feel free to subscribe for more stories about wealth, power, and the unexpected ways history unfolds. You can also check out my other videos exploring the rise and fall of business empires, forgotten fortunes, and the people and properties that shaped America. But either way, thanks for coming on this journey through Mar-a-Lago's incredible, impossible, totally American story. I'll see you next time. Cheers.